Two possible main event triple threats. Is it the long simmering blood feud or the twists and turns for the gold? Which one is better? Just keep watching. Welcome to the OK Not OK podcast. I am Doktor O'Kay, where we're always just keeping it real. And today we're picking a winner for the better between the two three-person feuds between CM Punk, Roman Reigns, and Seth Rollins, or Bianca Belair, Rhea Ripley, and Iyo Sky. So as always, you gotta start with the ladies first. So this feud is solely about the Women's World Championship, as it should be when we're going into a very big match at WrestleMania. And now the current match is right now set for Iyo Sky versus Bianca Belair. And Bianca's been showing some strange priorities, as she never seems to really trust Bayley for all the damage that she inflicted during her time in Damage Control, but she somehow fully is on board with Iyo Sky despite their many more matches than she ever had against Bayley. And indeed, excluding the Royal Rumble, Bianca and Iyo have had 18 matches against each other on the main roster, with Bianca leading 10-7-1. But perhaps Iyo had the biggest win, where she cashed in her Money in the Bank briefcase at SummerSlam in 2023, right after Bianca had just won the title. And then she did defend that title a few months later at Crown Jewel in November, when she got a little help from Kairi Sane returning to WWE. Still, she faced Damage Control so many times that you'd think that that would be the animosity would lie. However, it seems that that is more between Bianca and Rhea, as those two are the ones that are shouting at each other each week, as it was merely a perceived slight a few weeks ago in Rhea's title match against Iyo, where Bianca simply urged Iyo to get back into the ring to beat the count. And of course, this led to Rhea losing focus and confronted Bianca, eventually attacking her, which caused Bianca to fight back. And as we mentioned, this should have been a DQ to end the match, in which Rhea would have retained the title. So we had to give the referee a "what were you thinking" moment for that, for forgetting on how to do her job. Now ultimately this did cost Rhea the title, but their hatred couldn't go back much further than that, because Bianca and Rhea have not had a one-on-one match since NXT TakeOver Portland on February 16th, 2020. And excluding the Royal Rumbles, they've actually been on the same team the same number of times as they've been against each other, with 5 matches apiece. So this really does just go back a few weeks for them to that title match, where Rhea did not deserve to lose her title after Bianca's interference. But at the same time, what was Iyo supposed to do? Give up? This was her one and only chance to get to WrestleMania with the title. And yes, WWE talked about Iyo's undefeated streak, but this was actually those two first one-on-one match on the main roster, which is amazing for Rhea when you come to think about it, that she avoided both Bianca and Iyo this much over this many years. But unfortunately with this feud, we have to talk about contracts. Yeah, how exciting. Only a nerd like the SportsZu would be into that. So anyways, we learned that Rhea's signature was not effective to get her added into the WrestleMania match to make it a triple threat. So this week we learned 2 new things. Number 1, that Rhea had a rematch clause in her first title match against Iyo, which is really surprising because rematch clauses were removed from WWE contracts a long time ago at this point. And I guess she did some good negotiating with Pearce to get it back on for this one match. And number 2, Pearce can unilaterally break binding contracts, or at least he thinks he can, because as I said on the Doktor O'Kay show, Iyo better get a lawyer here, because her contract with Bianca is binding. So there is no reason why she should have to defend her title next week on Raw against Rhea in order just to make it to WrestleMania, when she's already got that contract. So did Rhea's rematch clause say when she gets to pick a date for the rematch? If so, Adam Pearce must be fired for having the contract signing before Rhea picked that date, and if not, Pearce must be fired for now getting the WWE into potential legal trouble. And just either way, Adam Pearce must be fired. But let's get back to the women in this match. So they all have some respect for each other, and they really just want to be champion. And this indeed does look like a pretty good WrestleMania title match, but Rhea and Bianca are arguing with each other every single week, and they just seem to push Iyo away every single time. And with her being the champ, how is she the third wheel in this feud despite holding that gold? They did have one brief backstage skirmish that I can't even call a brawl, and they also had a couple brief in-ring fights. And as far as the WWE goes, this is actually downright civil behavior, so we can't say here there's really any true animosity, and it's really just about being at WrestleMania in that title match. So I don't know, it's just logistics and timing of matches and some bad contracts that seems to really be what this feud is about. And that's just not the way you want it to go when you have three of the best female wrestlers all together. So I guess we'll have to wait and see if Bianca's going to be a good referee this week. And yeah, that's just another thing that Adam Pearce needs to be fired over immediately. Determining a WrestleMania match based on the whims of their competitor in this WrestleMania match, oof, that is certainly a recipe for disaster. Alright, well, let's flip on over to the guys, and as the saying goes, absence makes the heart grow fonder, where here it's the opposite, and actually it makes it grow colder because CM Punk brought the Shield into WWE all the way back in November of 2012, and then they were the ones who took him out in January 2014. Now, over a decade later, we are somehow reopening all these old wounds, with CM Punk mostly getting the better of things back then when he initially got the Shield's help to keep his title, and then once they started fighting, he went 8-4 in all matches against any three of these members, including Dean Ambrose. And even though the Shield got the last laugh with Roman Reigns winning the last one-on-one match on January 6, 2014, and the three members of the Shield winning their final two tag matches against him before CM Punk finally left after the Royal Rumble. Seth Rollins was immediately irate when Punk returned to WWE at the end of Rollins' War Games match in November of 2023, but he didn't get to do anything about it due to both of them having injuries throughout 2024 until they finally squared off on the Netflix premiere of Raw. So with Punk winning that one, and then Rollins just winning their steel cage match a couple weeks ago due to Roman Reigns pulling Rollins out of the ring, I guess we finally started to see those two at least get that animosity out of them. But with Roman then taking out both Rollins and then Punk inside that steel cage, well, it looks like it's not going to die down anytime soon. But speaking of Reigns and Rollins, we obviously don't need to get into too much between them because, as Rollins said on SmackDown, that it's always been about you and me, and I guess he's right. But unfortunately, it's not about Dean Ambrose. I really wish that guy would unretire from wrestling. Anyways, it was Reigns who won their last matchup in that tag match on night one of WrestleMania 40, but Rollins won the last one-on-one match at the Royal Rumble in 2022, even though that was only because Reigns failed to let go of the guillotine. But if it was always about them, why now do we need to revisit it? Because between WrestleMania 40 and the Royal Rumble, those two were not even on the same show. And yes, they did lock horns a little bit at the Royal Rumble, but they certainly know that is a free-for-all with every man for himself. And I'm not really sure why they needed to fight each other after being eliminated when it was CM Punk who dumped them both outside. But then of course Punk was immediately dumped out himself by Logan Paul. So perhaps it should have just been Punk who they were mad at instead of at each other. Unless perhaps they should have actually been mad at themselves looking in the mirror. However, Rollins' stomp of Reigns on the steel steps took him out for a while. But even so, I think we all knew that he was not going to be showing up anyways. I think the injury was more convenience than anything. Because, as CM Punk said, Reigns wouldn't have even made it to the Royal Rumble if he did not get Punk's help at War Games. And that also means Reigns would have no Ulafala, would not be head of the table, would not be your tribal chief, and of course, Punk is then chiefly the reason why Reigns is back in his old and very undeserved spot. So if anything, Reigns should be praising Punk, and since they're not even on the same show, Reigns really has no business interfering in Punk's business. So Reigns should at least realize that he was bested by a smart move at the Rumble by Punk. Instead, Reigns just seems to be jealous of CM Punk because Punk is the original Paul Heyman guy, and indeed is now owed a favor by Heyman. And so Reigns flew off the handle when Heyman merely checked on Punk after that very destructive cage match. When in fact, that was really just a rare, nice thing for that blowhard Heyman to do. So instead, Reigns just couldn't handle that because he can't really handle anything and speared Punk inside that cage. And now here we are with all three of them just brawling at the end of SmackDown last week just because of their hatred and jealousy and their shared history going back over a decade. So I guess this one is just a pure battle for supremacy, and you know what? Sometimes that's good enough. But is that the case here? Well, there are no titles on the line, there are no bracelets, and there are no necklaces, and there's not really anything involved except for pride. So while there simply haven't been enough interactions between these three men, and that's obviously mostly because Roman Reigns is truly despicable and doesn't ever want to show up for work, well, I have to give it to them that it's a simple tale as old as time with three dudes duking it out, fighting in the pit to survive. Well, we've got to make a final call here, so which feud wins? So first for the women, we do have a battle for gold, which is very important, but it's merely a perceived slight in a title match that went astray to a ref's error, followed by a whole lot of errors by Adam Pearce and in those WWE contracts. And so this is a situation that somehow is still not resolved, with Rhea getting her rematch against Iyo, and indeed Bianca is the special guest referee, and so this makes it a true bungling mess of a situation at this point when we should be celebrating these three top performers. And so on the men's side, since the start of 2024, these three men have a combined singles record of just 13, 14, and 1, with Reigns, of course, being the freeloader with a mere 4 singles matches in over a year now. So this is hardly the success of a group who all thinks that they are best in the world candidates. But you know what? They aren't fighting over anything that would make them a champion, so if all they want to do is hate each other and fight it out for bragging rights, well, I guess I'm all for it. So despite and really because there's nothing on the line here except for pride and getting out that built up anger, well, I guess we're gonna have to say that the men's feud is the winner as the better feud. And if you missed John Cena letting out a lot of built-up anger himself, and of course all of my grades for that segment and every segment for Raw, be sure to go right on over here and check that out. Because if you don't, just like Adam Pearce still being employed by the WWE after messing up the women's feud, that would be not okay.